Biggie said it best. Going back to Cali. The Raiders are going back to Cali for training camp in 2024. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 8th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, definitely appreciate that. Of course, the show is continuing to grow each and every day. That's because of you, Raider Nation, and because of my man Ari. Ari does a fantastic job each and every day getting us up on YouTube, and we definitely appreciate him. Check him out. Shout him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And you know you want to be a part of the show, you can. The Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will come up in segment number 3 of today's show. Segment number 2, we'll talk about, and you'll hear how it actually went down when the Costa Mesa Council actually had their meeting to ultimately approve the Raiders 7-0 with their vote to get the Raiders to Costa Mesa for training camp in 2024. You'll hear some of the rules and regulations, what the Raiders have to provide. You'll hear all of that, how it shook out, coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. And obviously the big news of the day is the fact that the Raiders will be hosting their training camp in Costa Mesa. Jack Hamet is going to be the location, the sports complex. The Chargers have been there, but now the Raiders will be there in 2024. So we'll hear about that and talk all about that coming up in segment number 2. As far as just news and notes, a little kind of house cleaning we got to do here. Raiders jerseys numbers have been updated. Raiders running back Sincere McCormick, he's now rocking the number 28. That was last assigned to David Long, obviously made very popular by one Josh Jacobs, even though Josh rocked number 8 last season. David Long was given 28. Now running back Sincere McCormick, he'll be wearing that number in training camp. Rookie defensive back Cameron Richardson is now wearing number 25. That was last assigned to Alexander Mattison, and that number has been floating around like hotcakes, hasn't it? Man, Trayvon Merrick was wearing that ever since he was a rookie in the NFL. Then all of a sudden he switched his number up to number 7. Alexander Mattison picked it up quick, fast, in a hurry, and all of a sudden it's down to Cameron Richardson. He's getting a number 25. And then also the latest wide receiver addition to the silver and black, Jalen Guyton, is now wearing number 4. That was the last assigned to Aiden OConnell. Of course, that number 4 is very personal for a lot of Raider fans. It's no longer Derek Carr, no longer Aiden OConnell. It is now wide receiver Jalen Guyton. Also wanted to update you on the NFL schedule release, something that we all anticipated and expected to be on Thursday. That was the original word that we heard, something I talked about here on this very show. Come to find out, it's not going to be released until Wednesday, May 15th. Adam Schefter from ESPN put the full NFL schedule is currently slated to be released at 8 p.m. Eastern on May 15th per a memo to teams this afternoon from executive Schroeder. Teams have been expecting it this week on Thursday. Reason for the delay was not mentioned in the memo. And then Schefter goes on to say this season's schedule features 9 playoff rematches, including all 4 divisional round games, both conference championships, as well as the Super Bowl. So that's something to look forward to, something to get excited and fired up about. But not till next week, right? I was really anticipating it being on Thursday, ready to kind of go through it with a fine-tooth comb and decide, all right, where's going to be the winning streak? Where's going to be the losing streak? Where's the cold weather games when the bye week comes up? There's so many different elements to analyze and break down when you start to look at an NFL schedule. I was already excited and fired up for it. Now we're going to have to wait at least another week. So at this time next week, we'll be checking out the schedule as it's released on May 15th. That's next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So, of course, on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, May 16th, we'll definitely be breaking it all the way down. Now, it's funny, after the NFL draft is over, we start to hear about guys that were potential players here, potential players there. What was it like being in the green room waiting to hear your name called? Well, the guy that I selected right here on this very show, the Locked On Raiders podcast, to go number 13 overall to the Raiders was cornerback Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. A lot of folks said, oh, Q, you're crazy. You always like a DB. You shouldn't get a DB in the first round. And I always thought that, you know what, Antonio Pierce and Terrion Arnold really got along really well. Well, Terrion was on the Next Round podcast, and he ended up eventually getting selected by the Lions at the back end of round 1. And I was only disappointed for selfish reasons, because I was in Detroit and wanted to be able to talk to the Raiders' first round pick in the green room, and he was the last guy left. So I thought, well, maybe the Raiders are going to trade up and go get him. They did not. The Detroit Lions ended up getting him. Really good pickup, I do believe. He's really happy with Detroit. Well, he was being asked about the conversations he had leading up to the draft with the Detroit Lions. And why do I bring this to the table? Well, because he brings the Raiders into the conversation. I thought it was a pretty interesting little tidbit, little nugget from one Terrion Arnold. Check it out.
I went on a visit there, and honestly, they told me, they said, you're one of those guys we have to trade up to get, but our paths may cross, and we don't think we'll be able to get you. And my agent, Nicole, she did a very great job of just she actually texted him that following morning and said, hey, it's a heavy O-line, receiver, quarterback, heavy offensive draft class, man. Y'all might have a chance. And then just from going back and talking to him, they knew that the Raiders, it was a possibility that they took me. And actually the Raiders coach, they called me after the draft. And they were like, we actually had a coin toss between you and Brock Bowers and landed on him. I was like, oh, wow. And then after the Raiders passed, they said, okay, we got to get up there before Jacksonville. So actually, Brad, he was like, they were trying to trade all the way up to 15, 16 to get me. So it's just one of those things where you go where you're wanted. And that right there, man, that fit. And as far as how the fans are, schemes that they run, and just even being around guys like J-Mo, Jameer, especially Brian, like, man, it was a dream come true for me.
So he says that the Raiders actually called him after the draft and says that he was a coin toss decision. It was a coin toss between him and Brock Bowers, and he said it was a coach. I'm assuming it's Antonio Pierce, but it could be any coach. But and look, I don't know how valid that is. I don't know how sincere that phone call was as far as the legitimacy of it. Was it absolutely down to a coin toss? I would tend to think that it wasn't. I have a feeling that Brock Bowers was the guy that Tom Telesco decided that he wanted to go with after seeing how the board fell. But just to let it be known that apparently he was high on the list of the Raiders, at least somebody in that Raiders organization. He was very high on, to the point where they called him and said, hey, it was a coin toss decision, Brock Bowers and Terrion Arnold, and it ended up on Brock Bowers. So I thought that was pretty funny. Obviously, we all know how it shook out. Brock Bowers goes number 13 overall. And of course, a lot of the conversation that we have and a lot of Raider Nation has, and a lot of the outsiders and insiders as well, NFL insiders and just people on the outside as far as national media, have been about the fact that the Raiders did not get a quarterback. So Jeremy Fowler from ESPN talked about in his latest piece on ESPN.com, you've got to be a member of ESPN Plus to get it, talked about the quarterback position and what ended up happening with the silver and black, and said that the Raiders had interest in Jaden Daniels. There was no doubt about that. That was really the only quarterback that the Raiders were willing to consider for a blockbuster trade, so they thought about it. It just wasn't able to happen, especially when Washington said, we're not coming off that number 2 pick no matter what. So, again, a lot was made of the draft plans. It didn't happen. Jaden Daniels didn't happen. And there were some attempts, but, again, Washington said, we're not coming off number 2. So there was that. So then the conversation shifted to, well, what about Michael Penix? And Jeremy Fowler goes on to say the Raiders also had interest in Michael Penix. He would have been considered at number 13 or in a trade back. I heard from multiple people in Vegas that the team did not want to reach. Fowler also went on to say that several scouts believe that Georgia tight end Brock Bowers might have been the best player in the draft, but because of his position being a tight end, teams picking ahead of the Raiders decided to address other needs in the draft. So, again, a lot of folks believe that the Raiders got the best player in the draft. They just looked at it as a tight end, and they were going to go in a different direction, which a lot of Raider Nation thinks the Raiders should have done the same thing. Maybe gone with the offensive tackle, maybe gone with the cornerback, maybe gone with some other position that they felt like was a need as opposed to more of a luxury. But as we've said many times on this show, I think Brock Bowers is going to be a hell of a weapon. It's up to Luke Getsy to figure out exactly how to use him. And before we get to segment number 2, I do want to say, while we're talking about weapons, for some reason, and I don't know what it is, and I know some people have hit me up and asked me about it, for some reason, I guess I can't get Hunter Renfro out of my mind, right? I know he's no longer with the team, but multiple times now, I keep saying his name and throwing him into the weapons that the Raiders have, maybe because he was such a weapon with the silver and black at one point. I don't know why I do that. Trey Tucker is the guy that's there in the slot position. Obviously, there's Devontae Adams. There's Jacoby Myers. There is not Hunter Renfro. There is Trey Tucker. Let's go ahead and slide him in immediately. Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, obviously Zamir White. There's Amir Abdullah. There's Alexander Madison, right? There's many different running backs that they have in the mix. Michael Gallup has been added. Jalen Guyton's been added, but definitely no Hunter Renfro. Like I said, I guess when I think of slots and I think of weapons, I think of him. So at some point, I don't know, maybe by the time training camp comes around, maybe I'll clear Hunter out of my mind as he's still a free agent, has not been picked up by any team, but thanks to anyone who reached out and was like, hey, Q, do you know something that we don't know? Is Hunter back on the squad? No, it's just a brain fart on my part. So my bad. Didn't mean to get anyone. If you were fired up and excited about the potential of Hunter coming back, that was my bad. Didn't mean to do that. But, I do think that they have plenty of weapons because Brock Bowers is obviously going to help in the mix. Luke Getsy has got to figure out how to use them. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, kind of news and notes, a little scatter shooting around with the silver and black. Coming up in segment number 2, I want you to hear how it went down with the Costa Mesa vote that ultimately ended up in a 7-0 unanimous vote by the city council. The Raiders will be holding training camp at Jack Hamet Sports Complex in 2024. You'll hear how it goes down in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is FanDuel. And across sports right now, the NBA and NHL, it's playoff time, and it's even winner-take-all time. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. And when I mean a big win, how about the Boston Celtics, the way they blew out the Cleveland Cavaliers, or even OKC. OKC hasn't even lost in the playoffs yet. They beat up on the Dallas Mavericks on Tuesday night as well. Love what Minnesota's been doing to Denver. I think that Minnesota and the Ant-Man are fantastic. What a great story there. So a lot of good action going on in the association. Of course, NHL, playoffs in the NHL is fantastic. I'm not a guy that studies the NHL all season long, but when it comes to playoff time, yeah, I'm locked in because there's a lot of really good action. Well, right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to let you hear, for the most part, how it went down in Costa Mesa on Tuesday as far as the city council and their meeting to approve the silver and black to have their training camp there at Jack Hamet Sports Complex in 2024. And this was a delay, right? I mean, these meetings started at 6 o'clock, and then they took a recess, and it really didn't get started until about 8:35 p.m. Pacific time. And at that point, I said, well, you know what? I might as well go ahead. I'm sitting at the home studio. I might as well go ahead and log on and listen. And I'm really glad I did. It ended up being about 25-minute presentation. I'm clearly not going to play the whole thing for you, but I will give you a nice little taste test and a good idea of how it all went down. But I did tweet out as soon as the vote came back, the Raiders have just been approved by the Costa Mesa City Council by a vote of 7-0 to hold training camp at Jack Hamet Sports Complex in 2024. My guy Vinny Bonsignor from the RJ and, of course, Raider Nation Radio 920 was actually in Costa Mesa. He tweeted out that the team has been in contact with the NFL about the possibility. No action is required by the league in terms of approval. So once they got approval by Costa Mesa City Council, they're good to go. And he also put in, and this was before it was approved, if the Raiders do move camp to Costa Mesa this summer, it'll mean that the Raiders, Rams, Chargers, Saints, and Cowboys will all be training within about 100 miles of each other. The Saints are in Irvine, and the Cowboys are in Oxnard, California. And apparently the Texans were also trying to get in on the Jack Hamet Sports Complex. So another team was interested in training off campus and at Jack Hamet. The Raiders ended up getting the ultimate 7-0 vote. So here's a portion of the Costa Mesa Council meeting. Like I said, it went about 25 minutes long. Clearly not going to give you the whole meal deal thing, but I do think it'll be interesting to hear at least a portion of it so you know how it went down. Check it out.
Jack Hamet Sports Complex has been used in the past by even collegiate teams as well as NFL teams. In 2010, we hosted the University of Alabama football team and the University of Florida football team in 2014, and we're all familiar with the arrangement that we've had with the Chargers for some years now. Some of the main highlights of the agreement with the Raiders is to use our complex for first training camp maintenance, which means that they'll be working on making sure that the fields are ready for the training camp. And so they'll have access to fields 1 through 6, starting as early as June 4th. The training camp itself would actually take place approximately from July 19th to August 11th. and then they could opt for potential future use if it's not being utilized. And so we're really excited to bring this agreement before you this evening. We enjoy public-private partnerships here at the city, especially of this nature, where we get to host, a professional team that gets to know our city, gets to bring in additional revenue. There's an economic benefit to public-private partnerships and hosting an event of this nature. And so we're really excited to bring this agreement to you this evening. In terms of the negotiations with the Raiders, what we have negotiated is a $165,000 use fee for use of the sports complex. As you know, any revenue that's generated from use of these fields stays in a special restricted fund that's just for improvements to those fields. This funding does not go into the general fund. It is specifically for the Jack Hamet fund and will only be used for improvements to fields 1 through 6. In addition, they'll be investing approximately $600,000, all costs included, for improvements to fields 3 and 4 to bring them to current NFL standards. And so that's an excellent enhancement for us. We don't have $600,000 ourselves to be able to get it to this level of functionality, but it's our user groups that will be actually able to benefit from this. We have about 5 user groups with almost 3,000 kids that use our fields. And so we're really excited about this particular contribution and their ability to get the fields to NFL standards and our community being able to benefit from that. And so tonight, this is a 2-part recommendation, and I'll also mention that there is a supplemental memo that was provided to council and also available for the public online, where we have a revised agreement from the one that you received last week in your packets. And we also have an additional recommendation here, but tonight we're asking for the approval, for you to approve and authorize for the city manager to execute a use agreement for the city's Jack Hamet Sports Complex for a portion of the Raiders Football Club's 2024 summer training camp and related community benefits. And the additional recommendation that requesting between myself and the city attorney this evening is to authorize myself, in coordination with our city attorney, to make any and all additional amendments to the agreement as needed to ensure compliance with the NFL's constitution and/or bylaws and related requirements. And that concludes my report. We do have, I believe, Sandra Morgan, the president of the Raiders, on the line, along with Justin Carley, who's their senior vice president and general counsel. And here in our own chambers, we have Lucas Paul here sitting in the front row, who's also one of the attorneys for the Raiders, to answer any questions if you have any. That concludes my staff report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ms. Farrell-Harrison. So do the Raiders have anything they want to say by way of a presentation, or are you just here to answer questions from the council?
Good evening, council members and Mayor Stevens. I just wanted to share a few words. I can keep it brief. I just wanted to talk really quick about this opportunity. First of all, as City Manager Lori Ann mentioned, my name is Lucas Paulie. I'm counsel for the Las Vegas Raiders. And first and foremost, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to speak and join you all tonight. This is a fantastic opportunity for us, Las Vegas Raiders, but we think as well for the city of Costa Mesa. We're very grateful for the chance to work and visit Costa Mesa for our 2024 training camp and get ready for a successful season. As part of our visit and the use of the Jack Hamet facility, we're happy to contribute financially and through other community benefits, as was mentioned here in this presentation, and ensuring that we are compliant with all league rules and any restrictions there too. With that said, we are working with the Southern California teams in terms of figuring out what that looks like. But we are at a point now where this would allow the Raiders to still hold training camp here in Costa Mesa with some revisions to the draft agreement, as mentioned. The core of the agreement is still intact, and so that would allow us to really boost and support the city of Costa Mesa, as mentioned in these deal points. So I just wanted to mention that, and again, thank you all for this opportunity.
Ms. Morgan, did you wish to speak?
No, I just wanted to thank you, city manager, and Lori Ann and mayor and council for the opportunity. That's why we have esteemed council present. He covered everything I think that we would like to discuss in the agreement. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, you did a good job. Okay, let's open it up to public comment.
Good evening, Mayor Stevens, Mayor Pro Tem Harland, and distinguished council members. My name is Dennis Ashen. I'm a resident of Costa Mesa. We are blessed. Tonight, you can approve a small proposal that may cement Costa Mesa as a nationally known and respected city while assisting in your efforts to make it stronger. Costa Mesa is home to what we consider our most pivotal defense industry, Anduril. A city admired for its companies is better equipped to attract top talent. It's not just Anduril, but also the significant presence of Tesla that has paved the way for Rivian, Bentley, and Lucid to establish facilities here. They are not just companies, but symbols of our city's prestige and potential. By leveraging our strengths, we can enhance our chances of persuading electrical vehicle companies like BYD to expand in Costa Mesa. This in turn will drive our city's growth and success by attracting more businesses and talent. We can become a leading, nationally recognized city. With Norte and our incredible food scene, we attract people. But imagine the wide-ranging effect of saying, Costa Mesa hosts the summer home of the Las Vegas Raiders with its commitment to excellence. We didn't receive noticeable benefits from the Chargers' sojourn. Second-tier regional teams have little swagger, and the Rams placed their training camp at UCI to prevent the Chargers from claiming OC as its home. Like the Chargers, the Rams have moved on. The Raiders, like the Cowboys, Chiefs, and 49ers, are national teams. Their fans aren't necessarily residents of their home cities. The Raiders are an upgrade, but we must support them with welcome parties, banners, and quick responses, probably similar to what we should do for Anduril. For example, having a city representative serve as a primary contact with Anduril, the Raiders, and electrical vehicle companies would be wise. These companies may anchor our future, but only if we play ball smartly. Approve the Las Vegas proposal tonight with fanfare and joy. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll close public comment. I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Harland. So I was here when we approved the Chargers in 2017. I thought that was a great partnership. But I do agree with Dennis that while I love the Chargers, and I don't want to say anything negative about the Chargers because it was a really good relationship and a really good partnership, so I don't want it to be misconstrued. But the Raiders are like another level of, I'd say, notoriety and national, national profile. And just if you look at what we've seen since this got in the press, I mean, we've been in Sports Illustrated, USA Today, and every time Costa Mesa is mentioned in those places, it increases our stature. The Raiders are a proud organization. I will personally say, and I'm probably the only person who could say that in this room, that I was at their first Super Bowl win. On January 9th, 1977, I was 13 years old, true story, at the Rose Bowl. They played the Minnesota Vikings, and they won, I think, 34-17. Fred Biletnikoff was the MVP that day. Of course, Kenny Stabler was the quarterback. Those were the good old days of the Raiders. I watched when Marcus Allen made that run in 1984 and cheered for Marcus Allen. And I was there the last time the Raiders played in the Super Bowl back in at Qualcomm, and it was 2003. It didn't work out so well for the Raiders, but I've enjoyed watching the Raiders. I admire the Raiders. It's a great organization. I have so many friends that are fans, rabid fans of the Raiders. They have a loyal fan base like no other, and a commitment to excellence. So I hope that this motion passes. And like I said in my quote, just win, baby, just win. Council or Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I can't top your nostalgia or your memory of Raiders history, but I have also long been a fan and remember going to games in the Coliseum in the 80s. I think it's also a good opportunity for us to look forward. And I know the Raiders will have much success in the future, like we will have in Costa Mesa. And I think it's great that we have this continuity that, as was stated by the public, there's an expectation that we have these kinds of facilities and people want to come to Costa Mesa for precisely these reasons. So I'm very happy to be supporting this.
Anybody else? We got a motion and a second. Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Council, and welcome to the Las Vegas Raiders to the great city of Costa Mesa.
So there it was right there, and you can hear the council members, you can hear the mayor really gushing over the Raiders. And, you know, there were some folks that were just, people in the community, members of the community that were gushing over the opportunity to have the Raiders there. They kind of gave backhanded compliments to the Chargers. Like, yeah, you know, the relationship with the Chargers was great, but they're not an iconic organization like the Raiders. So they were excited about the opportunity to have the silver and black there, as you could tell by the 7-0 vote. And of course, they're going to definitely get taken care of. The fields, the upgrades to that, the dedication to Costa Mesa High School with the weight room that they're going to be, basically redoing, taking care of the youth. I think it's really good. And of course, the Raider fan base that is there around the Costa Mesa area, the Southern California area, get to go down there and see the Raiders in training camp. And from my belief, my understanding is that it's free to fans to actually check out training camp. So I know there's going to be a lot of fans that are going to be traveling to go check it out. And it's a lot cooler area than it is in Las Vegas at training camp time when it's about 115 to 117 degree weather. So it should be fun to see the Raiders in another setting, to be off campus, and again give another portion of the fan base an opportunity to check out the silver and black up close and personal. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing that. Again, I was able to log on and thought, yeah, it's pretty good. It's some pretty good stuff. So there you go. That's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, we got to take a pause for the cause. And you know what that cause is, right? Monopoly Go. I've talked about Monopoly Go all the time. I get that. But there's just so much good stuff in the game. I actually find myself talking about Monopoly Go even when I'm not doing the podcast. Like just in general conversation, so many people hear me talking about Monopoly Go all the time. It's like it's just brought up. I had someone hit me up on Twitter with something really negative, and someone else responded was like, I think that guy needs to play Monopoly Go. And I just thought that was funny because clearly it was a good joke. But seriously, Monopoly Go is a lot of fun, and a lot of fun people have fun playing it. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments. You can work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes that you will unlock. And you could unlock all kind of different prizes. You could play against your friends. You could taunt your friends. You could do what you have to do. Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day. They have constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games and a whole lot more. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. Always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Get off the bench, aka off your couch, and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Going a little bit long on the show, so we won't have as many calls and texts here in segment number 3. We'll go ahead and knock them out. Text from Brent B. in Boston. It says, hey, Q. Brent from Boston checking in after the smoke is clear from the draft and just wanted to chime in with my opinion of the offseason so far. Free agency was a solid B. Overall, I think we were much less active than most of us were hoping for, but we landed a top talent at Wilkins, brought in a true Raider personality in Minshew who could provide solid competition for O'Connell. My only regrets are that we didn't bring in a veteran cornerback, and I would have loved to have added some more help on the offensive line for depth, but there is still time to address both of those. As far as the draft goes, I think it's fair to say that most of the nation was looking to land the franchise quarterback, but the cards didn't fall that way. My draft grade with the way things shook out is also a B. I think the Bowers and JPJ picks lined up exactly with who the Raiders want to be, which is a bully. The Laube pick, I think, will be a sneaky good one with new kickoff rules and will help in the screen game, too. Best I could put it is that this offseason has me feeling cautiously optimistic. I think if the team maximizes their potential, then we are going to have to start coming up with some nicknames for our dynamic duos on both sides of the ball, with Crosby and Wilkins and Bowers and Mayer. What do you think, Q? How would you grade the offseason leading into training camp? As always, appreciate all you do for the nation. Just win, baby. That's Brent B. in Boston. Fantastic text, my man. And, of course, Andrews Pete has been added on the offensive line, so that's some good quality help. Cody Whitehair was also added a little earlier in the offseason, so that's some quality help. A cornerback has not been addressed yet. I do think that that'll probably happen, if not right now, then probably right after June 1st when the Raiders get some more money post Jimmy G and his salary on the books. As far as just grading the offseason, I think that free agency was very quiet. Obviously, Christian Wilkins was fantastic. That's a bloodthirsty Pirate added to the Raiders' defensive line. That's going to be fantastic. It's going to help out a lot of people. So that was a big get. But for their offseason, the way they attacked free agency, it wasn't very active, and I thought it was going to be a lot more active. But, again, just got some quality players. We're able to secure a couple picks as far as compensatory picks. At least that's what it looks like right now for 2025. So I think that that's good. I like what they did in the draft. We all expected them to get a franchise quarterback. As you mentioned, it didn't happen. That's okay. Aiden O'Connell's there. Minshew's there. That's why the addition of Minshew was good for insurance purposes. You had to get him just in case you weren't able to come away with that franchise quarterback, which clearly you weren't able to do. So I think that that is a sneaky good pick as well as far as a signing. Now they got to have to go out there and earn it. When I say they, I'm talking about O'Connell and Minshew. They're going to have to go out there and earn it. I mean, if you look at them and look at the rest of the division, right, obviously the other quarterbacks in the division outside of Denver, they're already known and they're already at a very high level, with Patrick Mahomes being elite and Justin Herbert trying to get to elite, right? So O'Connell and Minshew are going to have their work cut out for them, but that's what they do. So I would say that I gave the draft a B. I felt very comfortable with giving them a B. I think that they've got 2 starters day one, and that's exactly what you want with, the first round pick and the second round pick. You want those guys to be starters. They got starters immediately. Like DJ Glaze, Delmar Glaze, that's his name is Delmar, but he goes by DJ as well. Just want to throw that out there. I think that he has the potential to show what he can do, right? I like the cornerback, especially Devonshire, the 7th round pick, the second 7th round pick. I think he has a chance to be sneaky good. Of course, Trey Taylor is a guy that we talk about in the 7th round. You know, the funny thing about the later round picks now, they used to be, I don't want to say throwaway picks, but they used to be picks that you're like, yeah, they're probably not going to make the team. Now 7th round picks are, like, man, that guy's, I don't know how he was still around in the 7th round, right? Like, wow, how did that happen, right? Even Thayer Munford, remember when the Raiders grabbed him in round 7? He's still sticking around, right? Devonshire has an opportunity. Taylor has an opportunity. I really do like the picks. You mentioned Laube. I think that draft right now, I would give it a B with the potential to be better based off of what happens at training camp and what happens this rookie year with these guys. How many of those guys actually make the roster? So thanks so much for that text. Fantastic stuff. But I think a B is fair. And if there's any time that the Raiders could get a B for the offseason, I think that's a win every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from EP out of Seattle, calling to talk about the quarterback position and what he thinks a lot of us are doing with the position, and a question about a player that the Raiders signed following the draft. Here he is, EP out of Seattle.
Hey, man. It's EP calling from Seattle again. I just had, I think people are writing off Aiden OConnell too quickly. I don't think the man's going to be great, but he sure seems to be bought in. He sure seems to be, humble, wanting to improve. And I think we are comparing a known entity in Uncle Rico to Aiden OConnell, who, you saw a lot of tape on him, but, boy, I don't think I could think of a more difficult position for a mid-round rookie QB to be thrown into on the fly. And I don't want to throw out that experience and that he took and the growth that that anyone will take from year 1 to year 2. Curious your thoughts on that. Also just wanted to pick your brain on one of the undrafted free agents that we got. Kid out of North Carolina, Amari Gaynor. I noticed that the Raiders had him in for a pre-draft visit, and I was just kind of curious, how often do those pre-draft visits go to players that teams pick up in the undrafted free agent market? Seems kind of interesting to me. I saw Sports Illustrated had him rated as a 4th-round draft pick, and maybe they thought he might be available in the mid-round, might be interested, and then because they knew him, they picked him. But I was just kind of curious if you had any idea how often a team winds up getting someone in as a UDFA that they had a pre-draft visit with. So I was just kind of curious about that. Anyway, I don't know who's going to win that quarterback battle. Might be AOC, might be Uncle Rico. But I think people are writing off AOC too quickly. I expect them to take a leap. So, hey, thanks for taking my call. I do appreciate you.
Thank you for the call, my man. And I kind of laugh because nobody, at least not me, and I don't think anybody who calls into the show is writing off Aiden OConnell. I just think that we all know that he's got a lot of work to do, right? I think that we all know that he could be good, showed flashes of being good. He's got to be consistent. The one thing about him in college, even at Purdue, was that he was the inconsistent quarterback. So he's got to show that he can be consistent. He's been working his tail off. He's going to have competition with Minshew behind him. I don't think anybody's writing him off. I just think that, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, is that I think that the Raiders need great. They don't need good. They need great. The arms that they have to go up against in their own division, right? Mahomes, Herbert, whatever's going on in Denver is TBD. I'm not worried about that. But in the AFC, Burrow, Tagovailoa, Josh Allen, right? Lamar. That's just in the CJ Stroud. Don't want to forget about him, right? I mean, he's a guy that can go and play, and you saw what he was able to do his rookie year, right? There's some really good arms in the AFC in general. So I mean, they've got to be able to compete with the best of the best. So that's all I'm saying. So I want to see what the competition looks like. I do believe that O'Connell and Minshew could both win games for the Raiders. I just realized that they are good quarterbacks. They're not great, and I think at some point the Raiders need great. As far as Gainer goes, I don't have the exact numbers, but I think that there's a lot of fact-finding when teams have guys in for their top 30 visits. They don't always necessarily have the guys in from the first round or the second round or guys that they know, okay, this is who this player is. But they have guys that are later round picks, guys that could end up going undrafted like Gainer did, and then say, okay, we had him in for a visit. We got to know this young man. We know what he's all about. I feel good about signing him as an undrafted free agent. A lot of these undrafted free agents are very close to being 6th round picks, 7th round picks. But what happens is teams look at him and say, you know what? I'm seeing these guys drop. I'm looking at the board, and I don't see where this guy's going to get picked by these certain teams. I feel like we can let this guy drop out of the draft and then sign him as a priority free agent. And that's what a lot of teams do. So I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it's a lot. I think you'd be surprised how many actually do get signed that went in for top 30 visits. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. Let's get one more text in and we'll close out the show. This is from Vince in Sacramento. He says, hey, Q. Vince from Sacramento. First, I want to thank you and Ari for putting the show together each and every day. I know I speak for everyone when I say we really enjoy listening. I wanted to respond to Guareb or whoever was being negative on the podcast on Tuesday. Man, it feels like our biggest haters are our own fans sometimes. Like you said, there's nothing we could do in the draft if quarterbacks don't fall to us. Then the Purdy thing. I don't believe he's an elite quarterback. I think it's the system and the weapons around him that make his stats what they are. The coaching staff is trying to build a successful team. It doesn't happen overnight. Adams, Myers, Tucker, Mayer, White, and now Bowers are going to be big targets for our quarterbacks. Like, damn, have a little faith. If you like Purdy and what they're doing, just be a Niner fan, bro. Sorry for the little rant. I just had to say it. Anyway, thanks again, Q. Let's go Raiders. That's from Vince in Sacramento. And, yeah, I mean, I get it. Some fans are going to be angry until they see the truth happen in front of them, right? And I know that Guara, in particular, has been very at a matter of fact about getting that franchise quarterback. And he's been very at a matter of fact as the league is not going to allow the Raiders to get their quarterback, which I think is silly, but you know, he doesn't, I guess he couldn't pound his chest and say that he's right when the Raiders come out of the draft without a quarterback in general. But they looked at it and said, there's not a guy that's left that's better than what we already have. So sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. And that's just what you got to roll with. As I said, I think O'Connell and Minshew could both win games. I do think that the Raiders have to upgrade that position at some point. It's just not going to happen this year. So you go in there with the recipe that you had. You play strong defense. Right? You have a commitment to the run game. There's plenty of weapons around the quarterbacks that you'll be, choosing from, and you roll, right? You have confidence. And I know Antonio Pierce ain't going to back down. I know Max Crosby's not backing down. Christian Wilkins ain't backing down. Tyree Wilson, Jack Jones, right? None of those guys are going to be backing down. Devontae sure ain't backing down, right? Zamir White's ready to rock and roll. So, I mean, look, it is what it is. Everybody can't have it. Like I said, if there was an elite tree of quarterbacks, everybody would be picking from that tree. Right? If you could just go out back, if the Raiders could run out back at the facility there at the Intermountain Health Performance Center and say, hey, where's that elite tree? Oh, there it is. There's the elite quarterback tree. Let's go pick one. Everyone would do it, but they can't. So, yeah, you just got to roll with what you roll. I don't think Guarab wants to be a Niner fan, but, pointing out Brock Purdy and what he brings to the table. I liked him at Iowa State. I was surprised that he was a guy that went as late as he did, Mr. Irrelevant. But, as you mentioned, that Kyle Shanahan system in San Francisco has turned a lot of quarterbacks into really good quarterbacks, and that's where Brock Purdy's at right now. He's a really good quarterback. He's going to get paid a whole lot of money when it's all said and done based off what he's been able to do. They got one more year of him on a rookie contract, a very, very low rookie contract, before they got to break the bank. So there's that. But Vince, thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. And sorry that I don't have time for any more calls or texts. It just ran out of time. Segment number 2 and 1 was actually a little bit long. Raider Educator out the 925. I got you tomorrow. Poncho in the 213. Raider Twan, I got you as well. We'll get all that plus more. We'll have more news and notes of the day, obviously, and we'll have plenty more conversation. I actually have a couple subjects written over to the side here that I'm ready to talk about. Just haven't broke it out, and thought that the Costa Mesa Raiders getting approved for training camp there in 2024. Obviously, that's the latest and the greatest when it comes to the Raiders news. Thought that was most important to get that off today. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.